Hey, I'm Brian Mahalik from Solar Tech Collective. Thanks for joining us for what is indeed a hot topic, PV fires, a perspective from the field. Now, unfortunately, fires on PV systems do happen. Fires happen on all kinds of electrical systems, and there's a lot more of them than you're aware of. However, recently, there was one that was pretty tough to avoid. The media covered it very heavily. And as soon as this fire occurred, people tried to start getting to the root cause of it. Some people tried to start casting blame or jumping to conclusions about what may or may not have been the cause.
We want to describe and think about all of the potential causes of electrical fires. And then we really want to focus on what of those hazards we can mitigate or eliminate from the field perspective, whether as an installer or an operations and maintenance technician. I think sometimes we jump to conclusions that it is always human error that's causing a fire, but that's definitely not true. There's a lot of other ways that fires can start. It might be something like vandalism. All of the copper gets stolen from a site and it starts a fire. It might be a wildfire where an ember drops on the building or the array. Of course, there are manufacturing defects and equipment failures that can start fires, but an equipment failure might be something like misuse of equipment over time, or there might be a bird's nest in the wrong place on the site. And of course, there can be human error. We might have really poor installation and or maintenance practices that can lead to fires. Something like an arcing or a ground fault might combine some of these causes. We could have a manufacturing defect that exacerbates a poor installation practice. But what we really want to focus on is the best practices and the standard operating procedures that can help lower the incidence of thermal events. We want to keep crews safe, and we want to keep buildings and their occupants and the neighborhoods around those buildings safe.
While thermal events are unpredictable, that doesn't mean that there aren't indicators that can be used to identify problems with equipment and systems that could potentially lead to a thermal event. It's critical that anyone who's working on PV systems is aware of these indicators, as they could catch an issue before it becomes a disaster. It's that old saying of a stitch in time saves nine. Some things that we want to keep an eye out for include abnormal equipment behavior. This could be indicative of a problem with the equipment itself, it might be failing, or with the associated electrical system. Visual indicators, some classics are deformation or discoloring of terminations or the equipment. Abnormal test results, are we seeing current flowing somewhere that it shouldn't be, or flowing when we don't expect it to be? Or are we seeing equipment that's running far hotter than it should be? And even smells. All of us know what burning or melting plastic smells like. If we come across that, we may already have a thermal event that's underway. Let's take a look at a video from the field of a bulkhead connector on a string inverter that I came across that was failing and overheating. So there's a lot of sites out there now that are 10, 12, 15 years old. In these connectors, the plastic on them and the equipment itself has a tendency to degrade over time. If you look at this particular connector that you can see here, not only is it loose, but there's also a crack running right down the middle of it. And it was running hot.
You think you can see the crack?
Minor issues, like that broken bulkhead connector, can quickly become major issues if they're not dealt with. So get training on the hazards that are specific to the electrical systems that you're working on or around. And never simply walk away if you come across something that's abnormal or suspicious. Always investigate. Document, perform tests, notify supervisors, or reach out to an OEM to get a better understanding of what's going on, especially if you come across something as exciting as you see here. We can't eliminate or prevent all hazards, which means that we need to focus on mitigation. Mitigation means minimizing the likelihood of their occurrence and minimizing the negative impacts if they do occur. Proper hazard mitigation depends on people. There's no way around it. We need to invest in ourselves and in our teams. We need to get training on best practices for installation, commissioning, and testing to avoid introducing hazards into systems and to build them right the first time. And we need to get trained on operations and maintenance to identify and address hazards as they arise going forward. And we need to get training on emergency preparedness and response so that if a significant issue like a thermal event does occur, we're effective at minimizing the negative effects and consequences. I'm going to give you a short demonstration of how being trained to properly use an infrared camera and integrating them into your workflows can allow you to quickly and effectively identify hazards. Put on your PPE, let's go. I'm going to look and examine everything I can see from the backside and try and see if we can pick out any outliers. All right, on this one, definitely a couple of things that are sticking out to me that are interrelated. So as I look at this junction box on the backside of the module, I can see that there's a diode that's conducting. It's running hotter than the rest of the junction box, which could be an issue, might not be an issue, depends on what's going on the front side of the module. In conjunction with that hotter diode, I can actually see that the third of the module that's connected to it is running hotter than the rest of the module as well.
Well, one way that you can create and foster a culture of safety is through the development and implementation of standard operating procedures, or SOPs. These are going to describe work activities and how to do them in a safe manner. These are going to cover things like hazard identification and documentation, personal protective equipment and lockout tagout, how to select it, how to use it correctly, equipment testing and operations procedures, and emergency response procedures as well. Now, standard operating procedures may need to be specific to a given site or system. They're definitely going to change and develop over time. Hopefully, they're going to be refined. There's sort of an ever ongoing process to keep them up to date, to keep them current, to respond to feedback from the field. But that is really what's going to make them most effective. So it's an investment, but it's going to keep everybody safer and systems operating better in the long run. You're going to have to incorporate these into your training, incorporate them into your program, and continually retrain on these as they develop over time.
Accidents, emergencies, unforeseen circumstances, they will happen. There's no way to 100% avoid it. Being prepared is the key. Having standard operating procedures in place and being trained on those SOPs. So for example, carrying and strategically locating Class C fire extinguishers can keep a minor incident from turning into a major incident. And practicing and refining our emergency response procedures. Do you know how to use your fire extinguisher? Do you know how to electrically isolate circuits? What are the reporting mechanisms and what are the evacuation paths from a site? We need to make sure that we're continually refining our procedures and training on our procedures and practicing those procedures.
Well, as I mentioned, training is going to be a big part of this. Solar Tech Collective has you covered. We've got classes online on various platforms. We're glad to deliver training in person. We cover topics such as NFPA 70B, the standard for electrical equipment maintenance, solar PV ground fault troubleshooting, how to track them down, how to locate them, how to do it safely. We also dive into the National Electrical Code, comprehensive 2026 NEC requirements for all things electrotech. That's PV, energy storage, power control systems, EVs, and more. And coming soon, we're going to have a class on thermography. So go ahead and check us out online for more information and see what kind of training we can provide you and your organization.
Thanks for watching. There are 2 other videos in this series. Click to check them out and subscribe for the latest on electrotech.